Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Ever, twisted your knee and felt that pop?
Yeah.
And then it just never quite heals the same way. Imagine if instead of just trying to patch it up, doctors could actually create a custom-made fix.
Right.
And get this, using materials from a source you would never expect.
Yeah, that's the really fascinating area that we're diving into today, this new research.
For this deep dive, you brought some interesting stuff, a health news article and a really in-depth scientific paper, both about this really cool research happening over at the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. They're looking at a totally new way to treat those pesky torn meniscus injuries.
Yeah.
The cartilage in your knee.
Yeah.
And it involves, get this, a customizable hydrogel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our mission today is to understand how this hydrogel works.
Okay.
Why it's got everyone so excited as a potential leap forward from the current treatment options.
Yeah.
And what this could mean for the future of dealing with these super common and often really debilitating injuries.
Totally. So let's start with the basics. Why are torn meniscus injuries so hard to treat?
Well, one of the things that the study really emphasizes is that these types of injuries to the meniscus are incredibly common.
Yeah.
And the current treatments that we have, things like grafts, they often, don't really fully restore the very intricate structure and function of your natural meniscus.
Yeah.
So that can lead to problems with healing and ongoing issues.
Right. And it's not just one type of tissue we're talking about.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. The meniscus, it's basically like the shock absorber in your knee.
Yeah.
And it's not uniform.
Right.
It's got different levels of stiffness.
Yeah.
Different properties across its different zones.
Right.
It's kind of think about a mattress, how a mattress might have different support levels.
Oh, right. So you can't just use a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the researchers really recognize that complexity.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, we need to come up with a treatment that can actually be tailored to the precise needs of the injured location.
Right.
Taking into account these variations in the tissue stiffness and all these other properties.
Yes, so it's super specific, very personalized.
Absolutely.
So tell me about this three-dimensional printable hydrogel. What makes this material so special for this type of injury?
Well, this is where it gets really cool.
Okay.
This hydrogel is created using structural proteins that are taken from, get this, meniscus tissue of cows.
Cow meniscus.
Yeah, I know.
That's so interesting.
The core material that they're using is what's called decellularized extracellular matrix.
Okay.
So let's break that down a little bit.
Okay.
Extracellular matrix is the framework, the structural network that surrounds cells in tissues.
Okay.
Decellularized basically means they've stripped away all of the actual cellular components from this matrix.
Right.
And that's really important because it prevents your body from rejecting the material if they were to implant it, right?
Right.
But the really cool thing is that they carefully preserve the underlying structural framework.
So you're left with the building blocks, but not the cell.
Exactly.
So
and that decellularized extracellular matrix from cows becomes the basis for their hydrogel.
Okay.
And what's really neat is that it can then be customized in a couple of really important ways. So one thing is they can adjust it based on a patient's age, which we'll talk about a little bit more later.
Okay.
And also based on the stiffness that's needed for the specific location of the tear within the meniscus.
Right, because we were saying it's not all the same firmness throughout the meniscus.
Exactly. So it's got different biochemical and biomechanical properties depending on whether it's in the inner part, the middle part, or the outer part.
So very specific. And you mentioned age playing a role.
Yeah.
This study looked at this decellularized extracellular matrix from both fetal and adult cows.
Yeah.
Why look at both?
Well, this is interesting because it really points to how tissues change over time.
Okay.
The researchers understood that meniscus tissue isn't static.
Right.
It develops, it matures.
Okay.
So they specifically compare decellularized extracellular matrix from fetal cows.
Right.
With that from adult cows.
Okay.
To see if there were like inherent differences that could be beneficial.
So did they find a difference? What was the result of that comparison?
Yeah, they found some really interesting differences.
Okay.
So what they noticed was that the adult decellularized extracellular matrix was found to encourage cells to behave.
Okay.
More like what are called fibrochondrogenic cells.
Okay.
And these are the types of cells that produce tissue.
Okay.
It's kind of like similar to fibrous cartilage, which is a key component of like the outer part of your meniscus.
Okay, right.
But on the other hand, the fetal decellularized extracellular matrix tended to promote what's called chondrogenic cell behavior, leading to tissue that was more like the cartilage found in the inner part of the meniscus.
Got it.
So essentially what they're seeing is the age of the cow tissue provides like inherent properties that might be specifically beneficial for repairing different zones of the meniscus.
Oh, wow.
So it can kind of like mimic the natural variations.
So the age of the donor could potentially be matched to like the location of the tear?
That's exactly right.
That's amazing.
They also found that the adult decellularized extracellular matrix had a broader range of fiber diameters and was generally stiffer than the fetal material. Okay. So again, highlighting these like fundamental differences that they could potentially take advantage of to create a more precise repair.
Okay, so they've got their base material. They've identified that age influences these properties. What else can they do to like really fine-tune this hydrogel?
Well, this is where they introduce another like really interesting component. It's called methacrylated hyaluronic acid.
Oh, wow. What is that?
So hyaluronic acid, you might have heard of this.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a substance that's found naturally in your body. And it's really important. For things like lubricating your joints. Keeping your tissues hydrated. So what they did was they modified it with what are called methacrylate groups. And this allows them to control how it forms, like a network. What's called cross-linking. So think of it like building a network. The more cross-links you have, the tighter and stiffer that network becomes. And this allows them to really fine-tune the hydrogel stiffness.
So is that how they customize it for like my specific knee?
That's part of it. What's really important is that by varying the amount of this cross-linking in the methacrylated hyaluronic acid, they could create hydrogels with a whole spectrum of stiffness. So this gives them another really precise way to tailor the mechanical properties of the hydrogel to match the needs of the damaged area that's in a knee.
So they're adjusting the stiffness both by choosing fetal or adult and then by tweaking the hyaluronic acid.
Exactly. Gives them like a dual method of control over the mechanical properties of the hydrogel.
And then on top of that, we have the three-dimensional printing aspect. So how does that contribute to this personalized repair?
So this is where it becomes like super high tech. They use three-dimensional printing technology to actually create hydrogels that can very closely match the specific characteristics of the torn area in a patient's meniscus. So this really addresses a major limitation of current treatments, which often involve implanting tissues that might not be a perfect fit with the surrounding natural tissue. And that can compromise healing.
So it's like creating like a custom-shaped, like custom firmness patch.
That's a great way to put it. They can even create what are called hybrid hydrogels, which are particularly cool because they have these gradual changes in their material composition and their mechanical properties.
Oh, wow.
And that's important because it mimics the fact that your meniscus naturally has these gradients in its properties.
Yeah, it's not just like one solid block.
Exactly. So they're not just matching the stiffness at the exact spot of the tear, but they're also trying to create a seamless transition to the surrounding healthy tissue.
So how does this all translate in actual living things?
Well, they did what's called in vivo testing, which means testing in living organisms. And they conducted animal studies. And what they showed was that this hydrogel was able to integrate really well with the surrounding tissue, which is super encouraging because it suggests, you know, this could lead to much more complete recovery compared to current methods.
So what's next? Like, how do we get this to people?
So they're now moving from these smaller animal studies to larger animal models.
Right.
And the researchers have said that their kind of first goal for clinical applications would be to treat smaller, more localized meniscus tears. And then if those are successful, they could envision expanding the applications to more complex injuries that affect, larger portions of the meniscus.
So this really could change how these injuries are handled. What are the biggest potential benefits of this personalized approach?
I think the potential for personalized treatment is huge.
Yeah.
Being able to really fine-tune the hydrogel stiffness based on where the tear is.
Right.
Potentially even taking the patient's age into account could lead to much more effective targeted treatments.
Which would hopefully lead to faster, better healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The idea is that if you create a repair that really mimics the patient's natural meniscus tissue in terms of its structure and its mechanical properties, you could potentially achieve more complete recoveries and reduce the risk of long-term problems like osteoarthritis in the knee.
And could this mean less invasive procedures?
Yeah, that's another exciting possibility.
Right.
Because this hydrogel, especially with this methacrylated hyaluronic acid, it has really good injectability, which means it could potentially be delivered through less invasive procedures, maybe even using arthroscopic techniques.
That would be a huge improvement for recovery times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for those more complex tear patterns, the combination of this hydrogel material with three-dimensional bioprinting, really opens up the possibility of creating these custom implants that can match the shape, the geometry, and these varying properties across different zones of even very complex meniscus injuries.
It sounds almost too good to be true. Are there any limitations? What should we keep in mind?
Well, it's important to remember that this research is still in its early stages. It's preclinical, which means most of the studies have been done in animal models. Human clinical trials are still a ways off. So while the results are really encouraging, we still need more testing. Validation to confirm that it's safe and effective in humans.
And what about the fact that they use cow tissue? Is that the long-term goal?
So they use cow meniscus in this study partly because it's more available. But the researchers acknowledge that future work will need to focus on using materials that are derived from human sources because that will minimize any potential differences in how human cells respond to the material compared to cow cells. So it'll make it a much more suitable treatment for humans.
Any other factors that we should consider?
Yeah. So in this study, when they were evaluating the hydrogel's mechanical properties, they mainly focused on its resistance to compression, which is super important for shock absorption, for the meniscus. But the meniscus also experiences these stretching and pulling forces. So future research needs to look at
how well this hydrogel holds up under those kinds of forces. What are called tensile forces. So how well it can really withstand those stresses in the knee joint.
And also, the testing was done, subcutaneously, not in an actual knee, right?
Yeah. That's a good point. So the initial in vivo testing, they implanted the hydrogel under the skin of animals. Which is, it's a good first step to see if the material's compatible with biological tissues, but that doesn't fully replicate the complex environment of the knee joint with all the different loads and movements.
It's much more dynamic.
Exactly. So as they progress to larger animal models that actually have meniscus injuries, that'll be a much better test of how it performs under realistic conditions. So what are the researchers saying about all of this?
So Dr. Soo-Chin Heo, the senior author of the study, she really emphasized the importance of being able to adjust this hydrogel
Right.
Not just based on a patient's age, but also based on the specific stiffness requirements of the injured tissue in their knee.
Okay.
Because, as we've discussed, the meniscus is not uniform. Right. And she believes that this adaptable approach can really provide a better solution for a tear, no matter where it is in the meniscus.
And what about Dr. C1 Lee?
So Dr. Lee, who is the first author, he highlighted the really good integration that they saw between the hydrogel and the surrounding tissue in the animal studies, which again suggests, potential for more complete recovery. And he believes that it's a more precise, biologically matched solution that could offer better outcomes than the current treatments that are available.
They're optimistic.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So what does this mean for the future of, like, treating injuries?
Well, I think this research offers, like, a really interesting glimpse into a future where instead of using these standard off-the-shelf medical solutions, we might be able to use treatments that are much more personalized and are inspired by the complexity of our own biology. So I think it really makes you think about how these advancements in bioengineering and three-dimensional printing could transform other areas of medicine.
Totally. Like, what other parts of the body or, like, common injuries might benefit from this sort of, like, super specific, tailored approach? It's really kind of, like, mind-blowing when you think about it. It's not just about this knee injury. It's like a whole new way of looking at how we heal and regenerate tissue.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
This was really fascinating. I learned a ton.
Great.
And I hope you all did too. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.